So, August 5th was a very packed weekend of exciting new movies. I mean, in theaters, you had Bullet Train. On Amazon Prime, you had 13 Lives, which was a pretty entertaining biopic. Uh, you had the surprises like Carter, and then you had kind of the big one, which was Prey. And Prey is a movie of a franchise that is one of my top three favorite franchises of all time, The Predator. And so I kind of blindly will watch anything related to that franchise. And I was a little surprised that it wasn't called Predator. It was called Prey, a vice versa of Predator. And it wasn't being released in theaters, which was kind of a, I wanted to say red flag, but like a weird flag for me. Like, why is this being released directly to streaming? I was able to figure that one out. But, it did, and I watched it day one on Hulu, and I will say I was concerned that it was going to be a massive trash fire. Thankfully, it wasn't. There is good to be had with this movie. There's a couple of things I would have done differently, but all in all, yeah, I'm going to get into it now.
Whatever did this, I can kill it.
Okay, so let's get some of the negatives out of the way. There's a lot more positives than all there are negatives. So you got that going for you right there. But honestly, there were times in this movie I felt that the writer or director couldn't decide if they wanted to just do a fun sci-fi action movie or if they wanted to deliver a social political ideology message with this. And honestly, when it comes to Predator fantasy, you have that for escapism, and a lot of people don't want to see that because it's like, look, you go to a Predator movie to see a giant predator kill humans. You don't go to a Predator movie to hear about the evils of patriarchy, And I know some people are rolling their eyes at me saying that, but like there's a couple of times that kind of comes up, but thankfully it doesn't feel so blunt, hit you over the head as much as other movies. So it's like, okay, all right. Now, one thing that did really surprise me was the lead, the female lead. The trailers had red flags all over it where it's like, wait a minute, this isn't about a human versus a predator, this is about a woman fighting the patriarchy. Like, that's how the trailers felt. And thankfully, some of the really fucking cringy lines in the trailer were removed from this movie, and that actually wasn't the entire focal point of this movie. And I love that. And that does come down to the main character, whose name I cannot remember, but she is the main character. I'm not saying that her name was forgettable. Like, honestly, I don't remember anyone saying her name. They probably did, but it just was like one of those cases where it's like, do we need to give this character a badass name? No one says this character's name, at least that I can remember. But overall, I was actually very happy with the character because they actually made her feel realistic. Now granted, I probably wouldn't have cast this actress as the main character because she doesn't feel like someone who's living in the horrific wilds of the 1700s. I mean, like, the 1700s in the Americas is the absolute worst. I mean, seriously, anything could kill you back then. Like, I probably wouldn't be able to survive the 1700s the way I am now. And, like, the actress they got She's not a terrible actress, but she kind of feels like someone you would see at the mall. Not someone you would see surviving her entire life in the thick wilds of North Canada, northern United States. And so there was kind of a sense of believability that I lost there. But the way this character was written, I actually really liked, because she wasn't amazing at everything. There are characters nowadays in movies where, like, literally, they can do no fucking wrong. They will never lose a fight. They know how to do everything, and they are boring. Alright? But this character, literally, she screws up, like, non-stop. She screws up every, like, maneuver she does, and it has a sense of believability, not because she's a woman, but because, ask yourself this, when trying to do anything in life, how many times have you screwed up at something? I can honestly say I've screwed up a lot with trying to do menial tasks, and so honestly, like, the more she screwed up in this movie, the more I felt relatable to her. Like, yeah, no, I mean, that's happened to me before. And, like, yeah, Murphy's Law applies here. There's no way that would have happened unless Murphy's Law was applied. And it made the character actually more likable, because it's like, every time something happens, like something fails or a screw up happens, you're just like, oh, you better run. You know? And so I really liked that. It made the character likable. And so when you did finally see the victories happen closer to the end, it was more impactful. And another thing that I did like was not every single male character in this movie was an evil piece of shit, like they do so often in female-led movies nowadays. It's like the two things they have to do to try and make the character likable. I don't know who told them this, but one, you have to make the woman amazing at everything, she can never lose a fight, and two, you have to tear down every male character and make them evil pieces of shit so the audience wants the female to kill. Thankfully, they didn't do that here. There's a couple of male characters that's like, yeah, obviously they're depicting this person as an evil piece of shit. But there were a couple of characters, like a translator and her brother, that were actually pretty interesting characters. And I really enjoyed them, especially the brother. The brother had like this really awesome moment of just like a badass mode he got to go into. It was just like, okay, that was a really fucking cool scene. And the relationship between her and her brother was actually kind of cool, because, you know, like, he's open to the idea of her being a hunter with him and the others, but he just, like, feels she doesn't have the resolve to go through with face off against her and a superior, like, predator type animal. And so, like, that's his concern. And, like, he even, like, says, hey, we're going to try this one moment to, like, you know, see how you'll do. And, you know, like, you know, and so I honestly kind of like the dynamic between her and her brother. And admittedly, the moments of social commentary that the movie does have, they're kind of brief, very short, and it doesn't feel like the overwhelming focal point of the entire story. So, like, honestly, again, props. So I don't mind if there's like a couple of scenes, just I don't like it when it's the overbearing narrative. It's like, oh yeah, we also happen to have a predator in here for like a couple minutes. That wasn't this movie, and so I was very happy about that. Now, something that really bugged me, but then got fixed, which I'll explain a little bit, is like the whole language barrier type issue with this movie. And like, case in point, I didn't notice it before, but now I'm starting to notice it more and more. And like movies like Black Panther, you can notice this, and once you notice it, you kind of can never not notice it. And basically, with a movie like Black Panther, or like with Prey, you have like this non-Western civilization like Wakanda in Black Panther, and they have their own language of like Wakandese or Wakandan. I don't know what you would call the language that Wakanda uses in the universe of Marvel, but they have their own language, and they show them using like little phrases throughout the movie Black Panther, but then in their native country with no outsiders in this moment, they will just switch to English. And it's so weird when that happens, because it's like, wait a minute, they're in another country, there's no Americans or Englishmen around, and so why are they speaking English? Like, and there's not even a thing like, let's practice English today. No, it's just they say like a quick phrase in Wakandan, and then they speak English, and it's like, this is pulling me out of experience. And it happens again in this movie, Prey. Like, she'll say a phrase to her dog in Comanche, and then she's speaking English to her fellow Comanche brothers and sisters. And it's like, why are they speaking English? Why aren't they speaking Comanche? And it really pulled me out of the movie. Now, there are some movies that do a very effective job of explaining like why a foreigner would be speaking English. Like, if you've never seen Hunt for October, you gotta see Hunt for October. But in that movie, Sean Connery, he plays a Russian, he's on a Russian submarine, and he's speaking Russian to his crew, and when he goes to deliver a speech, the camera starts to zoom in on his mouth as he's speaking Russian, and right as it gets as close as it can, it switches to English, and it zooms out, and everyone's speaking English with the understanding that this was just for the audience benefit, and there's still a language barrier when the Russians meet the Americans on the submarine later on in that movie. And so in that movie, it works great. It's like, okay, that explains why we can hear them speaking English, but they don't do anything like that in Prey. And so, like, it was really bugging me throughout the entire movie watching it, and it's like, yeah, I don't like that they will periodically use their native Comanche tongue, but then just switch to English for no reason. And then after watching a movie, I wish I knew this before watching it, on Hulu, in the options, there's a feature that allows you to watch the movie with Comanche dubbing. And it fixes my one problem, because it's like, why wouldn't they be speaking Comanche? And there is actually a way to watch this movie where the main character and her brother and the entire cast, apart from other characters they meet later on, are speaking Comanche. Now, granted, the mouth syncing is not up to par. It's very obvious that they're dubbed. But the one neat thing is, I watched a couple of scenes, and it sounds like the original actors did their own dubbing. So it doesn't have this weird, like, the dubbing is super high pitched, like a American Japanese dubbing you usually have. I can't stand American dubbing on Japanese projects, but like other countries have like better dubbing for their language than like Japan does. Japan has like the worst dub actors I've ever heard. But no, the dubbing on this sound great, and like I'm actually tempted to watch this again with the Comanche dubbing, because it's like it'll keep you in the experience much better. And so yeah, the problem I have with this movie, I found out got solved after, and it's like, gee, I would like to have known that there was a Comanche option for this movie. Now, something I did notice is that there's some really spotty CGI, especially during this one scene taking place at night with this like predator type animal, and like honestly, that was probably just because, oh, it's nighttime, no one would notice, because they show another scene with a predator type animal chasing a rabbit, and it's clearly CGI, but it's much cleaner than the nighttime CGI they had in a previous scene. And so not all the CGI is bad, just there's some spotty CGI. And then some people didn't like this, but I personally like this. There's this really great callback to Predator 2. And when they had a date at the beginning of this movie, it's like, okay, are they going to actually incorporate this callback or not? And I kept looking for it, and then finally when I saw it, it's like, okay, there it is. There it is. I was like Leonardo DiCaprio in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Like, there it is. You know? And so I did like that. Some people didn't, but you know, I'm a huge Predator 2 fan. And so now, one final problem I had was with the Predator itself, and that was the mask. The mask basically covered the eyes, but the mouth was completely exposed. And like my question was, how is it breathing? Because we have 6 movies that firmly establish predators cannot breathe on planet Earth. It's been very clearly established. I mean, sure, they could go a couple of minutes, maybe half an hour outside in our environment without their natural air, but they need masks. And this predator, it's like, yeah, I just have a helmet, really. It's not even a mask. And they never explain this. It's like, what? Apart from that, I absolutely love the Predator, because the Predator was fucking awesome. So, something I absolutely loved with this Predator is, like, every single interaction you see with this Predator, he gets injured. And you're probably thinking, how's that make him a badass? No. Like, there is this scene where he goes up against a Comanche warrior, and the Comanche warrior, like, just skewers him through the gut, and he literally just rips it out of his gut and, like, it stabs the Comanche warrior. It's just like, holy shit. I mean, no, the Predator gets fucked up throughout the entire movie, and, like, literally only a few times does he even, like, show, like, any, like, concern that he got hit. I mean, there's a lot of times he just gets hit, and he's just, like, looking at the person that, like, tried to make him feel pain, and he just, like, starts walking after them. No, there's this one time in the movie where the Predator, like, he temporarily loses his ability to cloak, and he's, like, surrounded by all of these humans, and he just, like, goes, all right, beast mode, and he just starts fucking slaughtering everyone. So, no, the Predator was a fucking badass in this movie, and I absolutely loved it. There's a couple of times when the laws of physics are defied, especially with the main character's axe. This isn't a spoiler, but in the trailer they show her, like, actually tying a string to an axe and using it as, like, one of those Japanese you know, what do you call them? Shuriken, like, you know, blades that you can fly around. It's the same thing Scorpion has in Mortal Kombat. And, like, there's this one fight scene she has where, like, literally, that axe is no longer following the laws of physics at all. And I felt like Spider-Man in Captain America Civil War.
That thing does not obey the laws of physics at all.
Look, kid, there's a lot going on here that you don't understand.
But no, there's a certain amount of brain turning offage you need to have with a movie like this, but you don't have to completely turn your brain off. There's some great moments, there's some fun scenes, the Predator's awesome. There's a couple of scenes I could have done without, but all in all, not the worst Predator movie I've ever seen. And I'm happy about that. So, this does kind of, if you really think about it, this does lead into a potential sequel. So it'll be interesting to see if they actually do a sequel to this. I don't know how Hulu determines if something was successful enough to get a sequel. Only time will tell. I mean, obviously this isn't the last Predator movie ever going to be made, because there's a huge Predator fan base out there. You just have to go to afbgalaxy.net to see it. And so, yeah, but no, that's been my review of Prey. I had fun with it. It's worth a shot. I would highly recommend trying it in the Comanche dubbed version, which is available on Hulu. And that is about it. So my name's Christopher Connell with 11 Hour Reviews, and that will be all.